You were never supposed to have that house, Emma. You know that, right? My Aunt Diane said it so calmly, like she was commenting on the weather, while she signed her name on a document that would erase 11 years of my grandfather's promises. I stood in that lawyer's office, watching my own family forge a version of history where I had never mattered, and I felt something inside my chest crack clean in half. You were adopted into this family, she continued, not even looking up. That doesn't make you Sinclair by blood, and blood is what counts when there's a debt to pay. 3 weeks earlier, I had buried the only man who ever made me feel like I belonged somewhere, Grandpa Walter, the man who taught me how to fish off the dock at Miller's Pond, who called me his girl in front of strangers without hesitation, who wrote in his will, in his own handwriting, that the lake house on Cedar Ridge belonged to me. And now here was my father's sister, sitting across a mahogany table, telling me that promise didn't count, because apparently blood counted more than 11 years of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and a grandfather who chose me every single day of his life. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already made a phone call that morning. A phone call that would turn their confidence into panic within 72 hours. They thought they were stealing from an orphan with no voice. They were about to learn I had proof, and proof doesn't care about blood. My name is Emma Reyes Sinclair, though for most of my life I just went by Emma Sinclair. I was born in Tucson, Arizona in 1994, and I don't remember my biological parents. My birth mother, according to the adoption file I read when I turned 18, struggled with addiction and gave me up when I was 2 years old. I spent 14 months in the foster system before the Sinclair family, Robert and Linda Sinclair, decided to adopt me. I was 3 years old when I became their daughter, legally, permanently, on paper and in every way that mattered, or so I believed for 26 years. Robert Sinclair, my adoptive father, worked as a regional manager for an agricultural equipment company. Linda, my mother, taught 3rd grade at Willow Creek Elementary. They already had one biological son, my older brother Tyler, who was 5 when I arrived, and 2 years after my adoption was finalized, they had another biological child, my younger sister Chloe. So there I was, the adopted middle child, sandwiched between 2 kids who shared blood with our parents while I didn't. For a long time, it genuinely didn't matter. I want to be honest about that, because this isn't a story where everyone was cruel to me from day one. My childhood had real love in it. Linda used to sit with me for hours helping me with reading homework because I struggled with dyslexia. Robert taught me how to ride a bike in the church parking lot, running behind me with his hand on the seat, laughing every time I wobbled. And then there was Grandpa Walter, Robert's father, who lived 40 minutes away in a lake house on Cedar Ridge that had been in the Sinclair family since 1962. Grandpa Walter never once made me feel like an outsider. From the very first summer I visited that lake house, he called me his girl. He taught me to bait a hook, to skip stones, to tell the difference between a largemouth bass and a smallmouth. He used to say, "Emma, this lake doesn't care whose blood you share. It just cares if you love it, and you love it more than anybody." Every summer of my childhood was spent at that house. Every 4th of July, every Thanksgiving when the weather allowed, every one of my birthdays that fell on a weekend, we were there. I have photographs of myself at 5 years old on that dock, at 12 years old learning to water ski behind Grandpa's old aluminum boat, at 19 years old bringing my college boyfriend to meet him. That house wasn't just a building to me. It was the one place where the question I quietly carried my whole life, am I really part of this family, didn't exist. At the lake, with Grandpa Walter, I wasn't the adopted daughter. I was just Emma. But even in the good years, there were small moments. Little cracks in the foundation that I noticed but tried to ignore. Like the Christmas I was 11, when Aunt Diane, Robert's younger sister, brought over a family tree project her daughter had made for school, and my name simply wasn't on it. When I pointed it out, confused, she laughed and said, "Oh, sweetie, it's a blood tree. It's not personal." Or the time at Tyler's high school graduation party, when a distant cousin asked my mother, in front of me, "So which ones are actually yours?" And Linda hesitated, just for a second, just a flicker, before saying, All three are mine. But that hesitation stayed with me for years. Or the way certain relatives, especially on Robert's side, would talk about the Sinclair bloodline at family gatherings with a kind of pride that quietly, unintentionally, drew a line I stood on the wrong side of. I never said anything. I told myself I was being oversensitive. I told myself that love was love, and paperwork couldn't change what I felt in that house on Cedar Ridge every summer of my life. Grandpa Walter, though, he never drew that line. Not once. In fact, the older he got, the more explicit he became about it, almost like he sensed the doubt in me and wanted to stamp it out permanently. When I turned 25, he sat me down on that same dock where he taught me to fish and said, "Emma, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it, not just listen to it. This house is going to be yours one day, not split with Tyler, not split with Chloe. Yours. You're the one who loves this place the way I love it. You're the one who never missed a summer. That matters more to me than blood ever will." I cried that day. I told him he didn't need to promise me anything, that just having him in my life was enough. He just smiled and said, "I know I don't need to. I want to." 5 years later, in March, Grandpa Walter passed away in his sleep at 83 years old, and within 3 weeks of his funeral, I would learn exactly how little that promise meant to the rest of my family. The funeral itself was where things started to shift, though I didn't fully register it at the time. We were at the reception afterward, at Robert and Linda's house, surrounded by casseroles and quiet conversation. My Aunt Diane was going through old photo albums with a few cousins, pulling out pictures to display on a memory table. I walked over to help. She was flipping through an album from the early 2000s, lake house photos, dozens of them, and I noticed she was setting aside pictures. Pictures of Tyler fishing, pictures of Chloe as a toddler on the dock, and when she got to a photo of me, at maybe age 9, sitting on Grandpa's lap on the porch swing, she paused. "This one's cute," she said. Then she set it in a different pile, not the display pile, a smaller pile off to the side. "Are you not putting that one up?" I asked. She glanced at it again. "I think we should focus on more family-centered photos for the main table. This can go in the box for later." I felt my stomach tighten. "Diane, I am family." She looked at me with this expression, not quite annoyed, not quite apologetic, and said, "Of course you are, sweetie. I just meant photos that represent the whole bloodline, for the memory table." "It's not that deep. It's not that deep." I would hear some version of that phrase from my family more times than I could count over the following weeks. 3 days later, at a smaller family dinner, my brother Tyler brought up something that made the room go quiet. "So when Grandpa's estate gets settled," Tyler said, twirling pasta on his fork like it was nothing, "we should probably talk about the lake house. Dad, do you know what he actually put in the will?" Robert cleared his throat. "I haven't seen the official paperwork yet. The lawyer's supposed to call next week." "I just think," Tyler continued, "if it's split 3 ways between us kids, we should talk about what happens with it. Like, does Emma even want to keep up a lake house in Ohio when she lives in Denver? Us kids," said with a strange emphasis I couldn't ignore. "I've always wanted that house," I said carefully. "You know that. Grandpa knew that too." Chloe, my younger sister, chimed in gently. She was always the peacemaker. I mean, technically, it probably would go to whoever's, actually related. Legally speaking. Right? Like how inheritance stuff usually works with blood relatives. The table went quiet. "I'm his granddaughter," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. "Legally, actually, and in every other way. I was adopted by this family. That makes me his granddaughter under the law." Linda reached over and touched my hand. "Nobody's saying you're not his granddaughter, Emma. It kind of sounds like that's exactly what's being said." "We're not saying that," Robert said, his tone hardening slightly. "You're reading way too much into a dinner conversation. Nobody's attacking you." "I'm not saying I'm being attacked. I'm saying it feels like everyone's already deciding I don't have the same claim as Tyler and Chloe before we even know what's in the will." "You're overreacting," Diane said from across the table. She'd come for dinner too. This is exactly why we can't talk about anything with you. Everything turns into this whole identity thing. This whole identity thing, as if my entire life of wondering whether I truly belonged was an inconvenient personality trait, rather than something they had quietly built, brick by brick, since I was 11 years old looking at a family tree with no branch for me. I left dinner early that night. I sat in my car in the driveway and cried for 20 minutes before I could drive home, because the worst part wasn't the argument. The worst part was that nobody in that house, not my father, not my mother, not my siblings, had said the simple sentence I needed to hear. Emma, the house is yours. Grandpa said so, and that's what matters. Instead, I got carefully worded non-denials. I got, we're not saying that, without anyone actually saying what they were saying. I got gaslighting dressed up as reasonableness. Over the following 2 weeks, the pattern continued. Small comments, meaningful glances between Tyler and Diane. A conversation I walked in on between Robert and Linda that stopped abruptly when they saw me in the doorway. I started keeping a mental list of every moment. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself grief made people say strange things, that maybe I was projecting old insecurities onto an innocent situation. I was wrong. I wasn't projecting anything. I was watching a plan unfold in slow motion, and I just hadn't been given the details yet. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Robert's voice was strange, clipped, formal, like he was reading from a script. Emma, we need everyone to come to Miller and Associates on Thursday at 10. The lawyer wants to go over the will with the whole family together. Okay, I said, I'll be there. Thursday. I walked into that office wearing the navy dress I'd worn to Grandpa's funeral, because somehow it felt right. Tyler, Chloe, Robert, Linda, and Diane were already seated when I arrived. Nobody made eye contact with me the way people usually do when you walk into a room. The attorney, a man named Mr. Halloran, cleared his throat and began reading. Grandpa Walter's estate included his savings, some stocks, his truck, and the lake house at Cedar Ridge, valued at approximately $340,000. Then Mr. Halloran read the specific bequest. To my granddaughter Emma Rhea Sinclair, I leave the property located at 118 Cedar Ridge Lane, in full, understanding that she has loved this house as her home since childhood and deserves to carry it forward. I felt tears well up immediately. He had done it. He had actually put it in writing, exactly as he promised me on that dock. And then Diane spoke. Mr. Halloran, before we go further, I think there's something the family needs to disclose. My stomach dropped. Walter co-signed a business loan for my husband's contracting company 2 years ago, Diane said. $210,000. When the company went under last year, the debt didn't disappear. It transferred in part to the estate since Walter was a co-signer. There are also outstanding medical bills from his last hospitalization, roughly $40,000, that the estate is responsible for. Robert added quietly, and Emma, I took out a second mortgage on our house last year that Dad also helped guarantee. Things have been tight since the layoffs. We're behind. I sat there, stunned, doing math I didn't want to do. So what does this mean? I asked, though some sick part of me already knew. Mr. Halloran shifted uncomfortably. The family is proposing that the lake house be sold to cover these debts, since it's the estate's most valuable asset. The house was left to me, I said. Specifically to me. By name. We know that's what the will says, Tyler said, finally looking at me. But Emma, be realistic. This debt affects the whole family. If the house isn't sold, Dad could lose his home. Aunt Diane's family is drowning. You're the only one without kids, without a mortgage, without obligations like this. So because I don't have debt, I should just hand over the one thing Grandpa specifically left to me. You're not really blood, Diane said. The words landed like a slap. I'm sorry, Emma. I know that sounds harsh, but think about it practically. Walter loved you. Everyone knows that. But this house has been in the Sinclair bloodline for over 60 years. It doesn't feel right for it to go to someone who was added to the family, while people born into it are losing everything. The room went silent. Say that again, I whispered. I just mean, no. Say it again. Say what you actually mean, Diane. She straightened her shoulders, and for the first time dropped all pretense. You're not real family, Emma. Not by blood. And when it comes down to protecting the actual bloodline from financial ruin, I don't think it's fair for sentiment to override necessity. Linda started to cry. Robert stared at the table. Nobody defended me. Not one person in that room stood up and said she is family. This is wrong. 26 years of birthdays. 26 years of Christmas mornings. Every scraped knee Linda bandaged. Every bike ride Robert ran behind me for. Every single summer at that lake house. And in the one moment it actually mattered, I was reduced to a technicality. An added family member whose claim could be dissolved the second real money was on the table. We've already spoken to a different attorney, Tyler said quietly. One who specializes in estate disputes. He said that because you weren't Walter's biological grandchild, and because there's significant estate debt, there may be legal grounds to contest the specific bequest and redirect the asset toward covering family obligations first. I stood up. My hands were shaking. You already talked to a lawyer, behind my back, to take away the one thing Grandpa gave me by name, in writing. It's not about taking it away, Robert finally said, his voice breaking. It's about survival, Emma. I could lose my house. I looked at every face in that room, the family that raised me, fed me, loved me in 1,000 small, ordinary ways for 26 years, and I understood, with total clarity, that when it came down to blood versus love, they had already made their choice. They just needed my signature to make it official. I need to think, I said, and I walked out of that office before anyone could see me fall apart completely. I didn't drive home. I sat in a coffee shop parking lot for an hour, staring at nothing, replaying Diane's words. You're not real family. But somewhere in that hour, the hurt started sharpening into something else. Something clearer, because I remembered something. Grandpa Walter wasn't a careless man. He had run a small business for 30 years. He understood contracts. He understood debt. And he had specifically, deliberately, written that house into a bequest with my full legal name. I called my own attorney the next morning, not a family friend, not anyone connected to the Sinclairs, but a estate attorney named Patricia Nwosu. I'd found through a coworker's recommendation 2 years earlier when I updated my own will. I explained everything. The bequest, the debt, Diane's comment about blood, the other attorney they'd already consulted. Patricia asked me one question that changed everything. Emma, did your grandfather's will include a spendthrift or debt protection clause regarding that specific property? I didn't know. I asked her to pull the full will, not just the section Mr. Halloran had read aloud. 2 days later, she called me back, and I could hear something different in her voice. Emma, I need you to sit down. Your grandfather didn't just leave you the house. He created a specific provision, Section 7, subsection C, stating that the Cedar Ridge property is to pass to you outside of the general estate, in a structure similar to a trust distribution, specifically to shield it from claims against the general estate, including debts, liens, and co-signed obligations. He named it explicitly to protect this property for Emma from any future claims by other beneficiaries or estate creditors. I actually gasped out loud. He knew, I said. He knew this might happen. It gets more specific, Patricia continued. There's a dated letter attached to the will, from 18 months ago, in his own handwriting, that the attorney's office notarized and filed as part of the estate documents. Would you like me to read it? Please. To whoever handles my estate after I'm gone, I am aware that certain family members have financial difficulties, and I anticipate there may be pressure to use the Cedar Ridge property to resolve family debts. I want to be unmistakably clear. This house belongs to my granddaughter, Emma. She is my family in every way that has ever mattered to me, and I will not have her love for this place, or her place in this family, questioned or exploited because of debts she did not create. If anyone challenges this provision, I ask my attorney to share this letter with them directly. I sat in silence for a long moment, tears running down my face, but this time, they weren't tears of hurt. they were something closer to relief. Grandpa Walter had protected me from beyond the grave. He had known. He had seen the crack in my family that I'd spent years pretending wasn't there, and he had built a wall around me specifically so it couldn't hurt me. "There's one more thing," Patricia said. "This provision means the house isn't part of the general estate at all. It's not available to satisfy the co-signed loan or the medical debt. Legally, your family has no claim to it whatsoever. If they attempt to contest it, given this letter and the explicit language, I'd be shocked if any court sided against you." I requested a second family meeting. This time I brought Patricia with me. We sat in that same conference room. Diane, Tyler, Robert, Linda, all wearing the same expectant, slightly impatient expressions, clearly expecting me to arrive with a concession. Instead, Patricia opened her folder and read Section 7, Subsection C aloud. Then she read Grandpa Walter's letter, word for word. I watched my family's faces change in real time. Diane went pale. He never told me he wrote that." "He didn't need to tell you," I said quietly. "He wasn't writing it for you. He was writing it because he knew exactly what kind of pressure I'd face after he was gone. He knew you'd say I wasn't real family the second money got tight." Tyler put his head in his hands. "Emma, I'm sorry. I didn't know he'd written. You went to a lawyer to contest my inheritance before you even asked me how I felt about helping," I said. "You didn't come to me as a sister. You came to me as an obstacle." Robert's voice cracked. "I could lose the house, Emma. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to save my family." "I am your family," I said. "That's the part none of you understood. You kept talking about saving the family like I existed outside of it. Grandpa Walter never once made that mistake. Not one time in 26 years. I didn't sell the house. I also didn't walk away from my family completely, though for months our relationship existed in a strange, cold distance. Robert eventually restructured his second mortgage with the bank and found a way through, without my help, though it took nearly a year and real sacrifice on his part. Diane's family filed for a smaller settlement on the contracting debt and sold their own vacation property to cover most of it. Nobody lost their home. It was hard, and it was fair, and it was theirs to solve, the way Grandpa Walter always intended. Tyler was the one who eventually apologized properly, nearly 4 months later, showing up unannounced at Cedar Ridge on a Saturday afternoon while I was repainting the porch railing, the same railing Grandpa used to lean on while he told me fishing stories. "I've been thinking about what you said," Tyler told me, sitting down on the dock steps, "about being treated like an obstacle instead of a sister. I was so scared about losing the house I grew up visiting that I stopped seeing you as a person in the situation. I just saw you as the thing standing between us and a solution." "I know," I said. "That's what hurt the most. Not the house. The fact that all of you needed a legal loophole to remember I was family, instead of just remembering it." He nodded slowly. "Grandpa never needed a loophole." "No," I said. "He just loved me. That was it. That was the whole thing." I still keep the lake house today. Every summer I open it up in June, and I sit on that same dock where Grandpa Walter taught me to fish, where he told me, at 25 years old, that this place would be mine, because I was the one who loved it the way he did. Diane and I have never fully repaired our relationship. Some cracks, once they're spoken aloud, don't fully close, but my parents and I found our way back, slowly, through 100 small conversations, and one very long, honest one, where Linda finally said the words I'd waited 26 years to hear without hesitation. "You are my daughter. Not my adopted daughter. My daughter." Full stop. I should have said that a long time ago, and I should have said it before a lawyer had to prove it for me. I think about Grandpa Walter every single day I'm at that house, not because of the property itself, but because of what he understood that the rest of my family didn't. That family isn't a bloodline you're born into. It's a choice people make about you, over and over, in small moments nobody's watching. He made that choice about me every summer for 26 years, and when it mattered most, when the people who shared his blood tried to erase that choice with a signature, he had already made sure his love couldn't be undone by anyone's convenience. So if you're out there tonight, wondering whether you truly belong to the family that raised you, wondering if love without blood is enough to hold you in place when things get hard. I want you to remember something. Blood decides who shows up in the delivery room. It's love, deliberate and repeated, that decides who stays.